Okay, so in our last video, I had said that when it came to DC Bloodlines, that I don't like the event at all. And that's not technically true. I do like one or two chapters, and that's really it. But overall, I can say that I'm not really a huge fan of DC Bloodlines. Now, in the last video, I had explained why. It's the whole idea of how DC was trying to introduce these brand new characters. You see, for DC Bloodlines, each chapter was introducing a brand new character. We're on part 5, which means in our first 4 videos, we have met 4 different characters: Layla, Edge, Joe Public, and also Argus. Now, the reason why I love the Argus chapter is because when it came to Argus, he was the main focus. It was a Flash book, but Flash did not appear until the middle and the end of that storyline, because you had DC said, make sure Argus gets the love he needs. Make him the main focus of that book so that fans can fall in love with the backstory or the character, and it worked out well. But what I saw in the first 3 chapters for Layla, Edge, and Joe Public, it was complete opposite. If you read those books, you kind of realize that those characters did not really get a chance to be loved by fans because they were not the main star of the book. For example, when it comes to Joe Public, he appeared in Batman Shadow of the Bat Annual number 1, but the main focus was Batman, and also another hero who's not really part of DC Bloodlines, but Joe Public is there for like 10 pages, maybe 12, and honestly did not give a chance or give the fans a chance to fall in love with that character. The same thing goes for Layla. The same thing goes for Edge. And so for DC Bloodlines, they were trying to push out these new characters, but unfortunately, you're not really given the chance to get to know these characters to see if you will possibly love these characters. And the reason why I'm saying all of that for, because when it came to Argus, fans fell in love with that character to the point where he was even able to get his own mini series. Like him and like one other DC Bloodline character did break out. 2 out of 23. And the perfect example of all of this is New Titans Annual number 9. And here's the reason why. Because you have so many different characters being introduced in this book all at once. And you're kind of wondering like, hey, who is going to be the new hero? The problem is that we don't get that new hero until the very end of the book. And by that point, you're not really given a chance to properly care for that character and want to see that character in more books down the road. But let's go ahead and get into the opening pages of this chapter. We jump over to New Orleans. Now, when we do, we pick up at this biological research center. Now, this center is owned by a character known as Steve Dayton. Now, for Steve, he's been around for a long time in DC Comics, and let me explain. You see, he was part of Doom Patrol as the character known as Minto, who was also dating Elastic Girl, who had also adopted Beast Boy. There is so much there in that one single sentence. But when it comes to Steve, he's also one of the richest men in the world. And so this whole entire research center is owned by him. The problem is that right now there is an explosion, and right now is leaking some chemicals into the bay, into the body of water, the ocean. And so now his goal is to call in the Titans. But before we're able to learn more about that research center, we then have to jump over to a new set of characters like Courtney, Jeremy, and also Dwight. Now for Courtney and Jeremy, they're the children that belong to Dwight. And for Dwight, the man is going through a bad divorce. And so we see him right now just on the phone yelling at his ex-wife. And his kids can also see it as well. Now, for Dwight, he is called away because he does work for Steve Dayton. And according to why, he's being called away because what's currently happening right now at the research center. And for the kids, they're kind of upset about the idea their dad had just canceled on them. But for Courtney, she does find her dad's credit card. Before we're able to learn more about those characters, we have to shift over to this devil worshipping cult. Now, this cult become somewhat important for the overall storyline because they worship the devil, they worship death. And that kind of mentality is going to become very important because we didn't pick up with two bloodline parasites. You see, we have talked a lot about the whole bloodline parasites. The bloodline parasites, what DC was using as a way to introduce their new characters into their books. You see, these bloodline parasites, they came out of nowhere. By this point in our coverage, we don't know much about the bloodline parasites, but what they love to do is drain people's spinal fluids. Now, usually when they do that, they're killing people, but occasionally they also activate people's metagenes. And of course, turning them into heroes. And so the bloodline parasites are here right now in New Orleans as well. And we have Lazik and also Praetor, and I really hope I said those names correctly. The reason why I'm bringing them up right now because for the bloodline parasites, we see them killing off a young couple who was just minding their business. But while being killed off, the bloodline parasites run into that devil worshipping cult, better known as the Red Hand. And this begins the process of the bloodline parasites using the cult as a way to bring more food to them, to bring more people to them to drain their spinal fluids. Now we're able to bring in the Titans. Now for the Titans, they're going through a training session. Now, real quick, let me just say, for the Titans, they're just angrier than usual. Like everybody on the team, except for like Cyborg and Starfire, are just angry at one another for no good actual reason. Especially when it comes to Arsenal, who's always challenging Dick Grayson's leadership. And so you do have those two guys begin to argue with one another. But while they're doing that, you then have our heroes get a call from Dayton. So for our heroes, they got to stop fighting against one another and go help out Dayton, which also means go deal with that research center. Now, with our heroes making their way over to the actual research center, you do have Arsenal really express his anger about the staff and their mess up when it comes to the research center. And the reason why, because he feels like all of this could have been prevented. The whole idea of the building blowing up left and right. And so when they do arrive, you do have our heroes being able to put out the fires before the building does blow up. But here comes the next problem though. All that different chemicals is falling into the water. But this brings in another DC hero. And that would be Aqualad. Now, when it comes to Aqualad, it's really more him right now expressing his anger with the team, expressing the fact that there are a bunch of chemicals being dumped into the ocean. And of course, polluting the ocean and polluting Atlantis as well. And so for Aqualad, he comes in just as hot as Arsenal was earlier. Now you do have Starfire and the rest of the Titans being able to calm him down. And they do then work together to make sure the water does not get polluted by all the different chemicals that came from the research center. But once you do have our heroes being able to save the day, you then have our heroes move inside the research center where they're able to regroup, but they also meet Dwight. Now remember guys, Dwight is the father to both Courtney and also Jeremy. We met those characters at the very beginning of the storyline, but when it comes to Dwight, he gets yelled at by Arsenal because to Arsenal, it's Dwight's fault. Now for Dwight, the dude had been trying his best to make sure that every single thing runs smoothly in this facility. The problem is that homeboy has too much on his plate. So of course, some things kind of slip through his fingers. But again, it wasn't on purpose. Now you do have another character stick up for Dwayne, and that would be Jill. Now for Jill, she yells at Arsenal like, what is wrong with you? You don't understand what he's going through. And she puts him in his place. And with that happening for Arsenal, he wants to go on a date now with Jill because there are not that many women who are able to get Arsenal to shut you know what up. But also for Arsenal, he has some ideas that could possibly help out this facility. to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. But now it's time for us to check in with the bloodline parasites. Now, when we do, it's the bloodline parasites at the moment getting more and more people to feed off of, because when it comes to the death worshiping cult, they begin to worship the bloodline parasites as their gods, but also going out of their way to bring more and more people to have the bloodline parasites to feed off of. But now they want a bigger amount. And so for the death worshiping cult, their goal now is to move into New Orleans to get a higher amount of food for the bloodline parasites. Now, we also learn here that for Lazik, he is the leader of the bloodline parasites. But when it comes to other bloodline parasites, they don't really try to follow his orders at all. Like, for example, when it comes to Praetor, she's not trying to listen to him at all, because her main goal right now is to feed. That's all she wants to do. Continue to eat more and more people's spinal fluids. Now, this kind of leads into a series of different events happening like all at once. And let me explain. Because when it comes to Dwight, when he does get back home, he realized that his kids are missing. So, of course, he begins to call out for help. When it comes to Courtney and Jeremy, they're right now out in the streets just getting some food. But then out of nowhere, you have that cult try to grab Courtney and also Jeremy. Now, what's happening, you had Arsenal and Jill on a date. And for Arsenal, he was trying his best to save the kid's life. Unfortunately, he was not able to stop the guys from getting away with Courtney. He did save Jeremy, but not Courtney. And now we know when it comes to Courtney, she'll now become the target for the bloodline parasites to feed off her spinal fluids. And the thing is, as we do switch over to Courtney, we do see her getting her spinal fluid drained by one of the bloodline parasites. But then, right after that, her meta gene activates. We also see something going inside of her, some kind of energy. But once she does wake up, we now have our new DC character, and that would be Anima. Now, again, like I said earlier, this is my problem with DC Bloodlines. We're now almost at the end of this chapter, and you're now just telling us who is going to be our new DC Bloodline character. But either way, you didn't have her kind of act like Edge, where once she had her spinal fluid drained, and once her meta gene did activate to save her life, she's really unable to remember anything from her past life. And of course, she's also kind of freaking out at the moment when it comes to her powers being activated. But this now leads us into the ending of the storyline, because for Courtney, she does run into her family. And the thing is, we kind of learn here about one of her abilities. It's kind of similar to Joe Public, the idea that she has the ability to absorb other people's energy. But right after doing that, she disappears. But you did have her father and her brother both kind of realize that she does not recognize them at all. But now for Courtney, she wants to get revenge against the people who had killed her off. And of course, that would be the bloodline parasites, but also the cult as well, who had kidnapped her. And so this is where we're going to wrap up today's video, because when it comes to Anima, once she does find the bloodline parasites, she begins to battle against them. But you also have the Titans arrive as well, because, well, they were looking for her. Now, when it comes to Anima, we also learn two new things about her. The first is that, well, she also has the ability to let out this creature, this energy creature, better known as Animus. And so, Animus, not Animus, Animus. And so you do have these two characters being able to work together, because technically they share a body with one another. But on top of that, we also see her being able to absorb people's life energy to the point where it does seem like she kills somebody, but also kind of adds on to this body armor for herself to use in the battlefield. And so once she has an armor on, she's then able to damage the bloodline parasites. Now, with the bloodline parasites being injured, like in other books, they have to retreat. And so you have these two begin to run away. And once they do, you have Courtney say she can't stay here with her family because it's too dangerous now because the way she is. And so you have her, like other bloodline characters, just say, you know what? It's time for me to leave. And she flies away, but with that creature inside of her, better known as Animus, or Animus, sorry, Animus. I don't know why I want to keep saying Animus. That's my bad right there. But either way, guys, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.